Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at the Marvel Legends 6-inch Sabretooth action figure from the Bonebreaker Build-A-Figure wave. At the front of the box, we see the X-Men logo. At the top of the box, also the modern X-Men logo. Down to the bottom, some product information. And down to the side, there's artwork of Sabretooth screaming and charging into battle. Down the back of the box, you see a full version of that artwork. I like how the orange of his outfit contrasts against the blue background. And of course we also have the character description for Sabretooth over here. Further down we have the rest of the characters in the wave, and finally at the bottom more product information. And down to the last side we see the same reflected artwork of Sabretooth. So let's go ahead and get this guy open. Out of the packaging, we see the figure on the plastic tray. He comes with several parts for the Bonebreaker Build-A-Figure, and that is the waist piece, the engine, as well as a cover for Bonebreaker. Unfortunately, Sabretooth himself doesn't come with any accessories at all. I think Hasbro could have maybe included some interchangeable fists so that we have some options with his hands. A screaming alternate head sculpt would have also made this figure much better, and would have also reflected the look of the character in the artwork on the box. A quick overview of Sabretooth's sculpt. He's on the same base body from the Wonder Man Buck. The new parts are his head sculpt, the fur piece on his shoulders, his furry forearms, his hands, the furry lower legs, as well as his feet. I have one small gripe with his overall proportions. The new lower arms combined with his large, expressive clawed hands just look a little too long for his body. You can see that the tips of his fingernails are almost at his knees. However, I will say that I can look past that because he's actually got a lot of paint applications all over his body. In the absence of an alternate head, Hasbro must absolutely nail his one and only head sculpt. And I think that they almost gave us a perfect Sabretooth head sculpt. He's got a really evil smile on his face, somewhere between smiling as well as sneering. Sculpting is sharp because you can see all the lines in those wrinkles in his forehead, his furrowed brows, the lines down the sides of his cheek, and even a little dimple on his chin. With the digital dot matrix printing, the paint on his eyebrows, his eyes, as well as his mouth area are all sharp. There's even little subtle details, like the paint on his eyebrows are two-tone, and you can see the gum lining on the sides of his teeth as well. My only gripe with his teeth is that the sculpt looks a little soft. It could be that the white paint on his teeth is also kind of thickly applied, because his teeth to me look a little bit like those false vampire teeth that you wear on Halloween. Looking just a little too soft for my liking. Moving on to his hairpiece, it is a yellow piece of plastic that's separately glued to his head. There's a brown wash on that hairpiece, so you can bring out all that texture and waving on it. And paint wash is a lot of what you will observe on this figure, because there's also a similar paint wash technique applied to the fur piece on his shoulders. This fur piece on his shoulders is cast in a white plastic with similarly sharp sculpting, so you can see all that fur textures. And once more, all the textures are further amplified with a light brown or kind of tan wash on them. So just looking at his head sculpt as well as his chest area, it's really interesting to look at because of all that wash and texture. So I'll say that this looks the part as one of the best Sabretooth 6-inch action figures ever. I should also mention that the fur piece on his torso is actually a separate piece and it moves around sometimes, so that's a minor annoyance when you pose him. It's also pegged into a hole on his back, and you can easily pop it out and remove it if you want to. Moving on to the rest of his body, let's look at his torso. It is cast in an orange plastic with brown paint for a sort of bodysuit on him. However, this brown paint and the strip down the middle of his torso is a little too skinny for my liking. It looks a little bit like Borat's mankini. And once you move on down to the sides, where it's supposed to gradually merge into his crotch, the paint over here on the sides just ends kind of abruptly at this small area. Kind of like the paint applications were just stopped on the front half of his torso. They should have gradually merged it into his crotch piece. And now looking at his arms, once again also that orange plastic from his shoulders to his biceps. And then we have this new forearm piece that's cast in a white plastic, similarly given that light brown wash, and the effect looks great because all the fur textures are visible. And looking at his hands, they are cast in a brown plastic Once again, there's also paint for where you can see his fingers coming out of those finger gloves. There's also an additional hit of paint for his brown long nails. The sculpt of his clawed hands are also quite well done, looking natural enough to be relaxed or in a slashing position against his enemies. So once again, this entire setup for his arm looks visually interesting. I do have a nitpick, which is that middle elbow joint is just too obvious, with its orange just standing out against the rest of the white, furry forearm. Even without sculpting any textures on that elbow joint, Hasbro should have at least given it a paint application so that it will blend into his forearm. And we've actually seen Hasbro apply paint applications on elbow joints, so there's really no excuse over here. Onto his legs, the upper part of his legs are that same orange plastic, and on his lower legs, there's the same white fur piece. On his calf, this fur piece also has that same light brown wash, just like his arms. And instead of shoes, he's now sculpted with feet. These feet are cast in a brown plastic. Paint applications for his exposed toes, as well as brown paint for those long toenails. And I really love how this treatment of his lower legs is similar to his forearms, which is why I say this figure is really interesting and visually appealing. And the use of different plastics and paint, as well as wash, on his limbs really matches up to the good work on his chest as well as his head sculpt. Of course, we need to do a side-by-side with a couple of Hasbro Marvel Legends version of Sabretooth. On the left, we have the one from the Puck Wave, and on the right, we have the one from the Apocalypse Wave. He's appropriately on a smaller body compared to the Sentry body buck on the other two Sabretooths. If I recall correctly, he was drawn a little smaller and leaner in the comics when he was using this classic outfit. Head swaps are possible, and they sit at the right height across all the bodies. With the Apocalypse Wave Sabretooth's head on the new classic body, I will say that the head looks the right size compared to the body. However, this smaller body amplifies the problem with this head sculpt, which is that its face is just proportionally too big for its head. But looking at the new Sabretooth head sculpt on that Apocalypse Wave Sabretooth body, I think it's a good look for him to have a different expression, sneering instead of screaming. And it's also a good alternative to display him without his cowl up. And likewise, the new Sabretooth head sculpt works just fine with the Puck Wave Sabretooth. I particularly like how the Puck Wave Sabretooth head sculpt looks on the new classic body. Despite the different shades of browns on the two outfits, the brown cowl on the Puck Wave Sabretooth head sculpt actually matches the new classic body pretty well. Articulation wise, his head is on a ball hinge, so that goes 360. There's a little sideways tilting. The hinge gives you a good range downwards as well as upwards. Swivel hinge at the shoulders, so his arms go all the way around as well as coming out quite a good bit. There's an upper bicep swivel, so it goes 360. Double hinge at the elbow for quite good range beyond 90 degrees. Swivel hinge at his wrists, so they go 360, articulating inwards as well as outwards. Mid-torso ab crunch for good range forward as well as backward. Waist swivel for 360 spin. Ball jointed hips that go out just that far and no problems forward and backward. Upper thigh swivel for 360 spin. Double jointed knees for quite good range. And over here, despite having a fur piece on his calf, Hasbro wasn't able to give us a hidden calf swivel. So that's a missed opportunity and a lost point of articulation compared to the regular Wonder Man body mold. He's got ankle tilt upwards, which is a little limited because of that fur piece, and he's got good range downwards. And finally, he's got ankle pivot outwards as well as inwards. And I must say that because of the sculpt of his feet, which ends up thinner than a lot of shoe sculpts or boot sculpts, you might feel that his feet are just a little gummy when you handle them. Sabretooth stands at 6.5 inches, and that's about 16.5 centimeters. Naturally, he's taller than Wolverine and Cyclops. Standing him beside Maverick and Omega Red, he's also bigger than Psylocke and Jubilee. Here he is with Magneto and Juggernaut, and Mr. Sinister and Black Suit Spider-Man. I'm surprisingly impressed with this version of Sabretooth. Despite zero accessories, the Sculpt and Paint make him a strong contender for the best 6-inch Sabretooth action figure. When you get him in hand, he feels solid and his joints are sturdy. This is a very well executed version of classic Sabretooth and a must get if you are an X-Men fan. Please like and share this video, let me know what you think in the comments below, and subscribe to my channel for more toy reviews. Thanks for watching, take care and stay safe.